Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Pajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Bhagavad Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnu Bhagavad Paramahansa Bhagavad-gita Ashtoto Tadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktabinda Ki Jai All glory to the assembled, this is the lady side. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, everyone have a book and a seat. We have more books and more seats if you need them. Yeah, really. They're streaming in. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this first day of January 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are reading chapter 9, entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge. We're on text 2, page 375. And we'll have you a book in a second. Now, we have begun this verse and purport. It's a long purport, so we're breaking it up probably into 3 or 4 sessions. Wow. And I forget exactly how far we got. Marcy, how far did we get here? Okay, hold on. We have another gentleman coming in. Would you like to sit? Yeah, I can sit on this side. This is all going to fill up with ladies. They'll be down to the wall. Gradually, this is our experience now. So how far did we get? 376. Okay, so I should start there. Okay. So, but we will chant the verse again on page 375. 375. Rajvidya Rashiguyam Pavitram idam uttamam Pratyaksha bhagamang dharmyam Susukham kartamavyayam. Radyavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idamuttamam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Susukham kartamavyayam. Radyavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idamuttamam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Susukham kartamavyayam. Madhavendra. Rajavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idamuttamam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Susukham kartamavyayam. Hasyagramya, you know this one? Not really. All right, Madhavendra, go ahead. Rajavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idamuttamam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Susukham kartamavyayam. Rajavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idamuttamam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Susukham kartamavyayam. Anyone else on this side? Chris? No? Not today? All right. Rajavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idamuttamam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. You know this verse. Let her borrow the book. Let her borrow the book while we're still chanting. Go ahead. Page 375. Rajavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idam uttamam. Dharmyam. Dharmyam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Go ahead. You can read it. Both words. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Go ahead, try it again. Avagamam. Avagamam. Dharmyam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. Susukham. Good. Susukham kartamavyayam. Rajavidya rajaguhyam. Pavitram idamuttamam. Dharmyam. Pratyakshavagam. Pratyakshavagam dharmyam. You're leading. Read the next line, please. Susukham kartamavyayam. Okay, I'm going to read the translation now. This knowledge, Krishna said to Arjuna, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Okay, we've read part of this purport. On page 376, right in the middle, the paragraph that begins this knowledge, that's where this will be beginning. This knowledge is the purest form of all activities, as explained in Vedic literature. In the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the results of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reactions. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, Harekrishna, we have to keep it quiet. Yeah, sorry. When the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree does not appear immediately to grow. It takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree, then it flowers and bears fruit. And when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by persons who have sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, and like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are different stages. The sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the results or the fruit of that sinful action are still to be experienced. There are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and are giving us fruit, which we are experiencing as distress and pain. Bottom of page 376, if you have a book, no book. As explained in the 28th verse of the 7th chapter, a person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. This statement is confirmed in the Padma Purana. Aprarabdha palam papam kutam bijam palonmukam. Kramenaiva paliyeta Vishnu bhakti vatatmanam. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stock or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram Uttamam, the purest. Uttama means transcendental. Tamas means this material world or darkness, and Uttama means that which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes it appears that devotees are engaged just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with devotional service will know that they are not material activities. They are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So these paragraphs which we read, one of which we had read before, I believe, but no problem. Srila Prabhupada is talking about this phrase, Pavitram Idamuttamam. Pavitra means purifying. And it is understood that in this material world in which we live, this world, we are contaminated. Our true consciousness is covered by various degrees of ignorance. The Vaishnava teachings paint a picture in which each one of us is originally in a state of unending happiness in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Srila Prabhupada began his magazine under the instructions of his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he called it Back to Godhead magazine, the very title of which indicates that we were once with Godhead, isn't it? And that's indeed the scenario that we're given. That all of us have fallen from our original state of grace, if you will. And what is that state? Satchidananda. Satchidananda is a nice phrase which describes Krishna's form. Eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. Now, we remain eternal because the soul is eternal. This is the first instruction of Bhagavad Gita, which is summarized in one verse in the second chapter, 220. Jayate mriyate vakatachan nayabhut va bhavita va nabhuya ajo nitya shasvatoyam purana nahanyate handamane shirire. This verse is practically identical to a verse in the Upanishads. And so what does it say? It says, for the soul, every one of us is a spirit soul, an atma, jivatma. There is no birth, there is no death at any time. Jayate mriyate vakatachan. We haven't come into being. We're not new ones coming into being. In the future souls won't come into being. We are all eternal, just as Krishna is eternal. Krishna is never born, although he appears in this world in Jamashtami, but essentially in his true self, he's never born, unborn, Aja. So, Aja Nitya Shashvato Yam Purana, eternal, unborn, eternal, ever-existing, primeval. We are not slain, we do not die when the body dies. Everybody dies, nobody dies. I like to meditate. It's a paradox. But much of Prabhupada's preaching is about we're all going to die. We have to be serious about that because this is our main problem. But don't worry, you're not actually going to die. This is Krishna's main point in the beginning. And of course, in the context of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he's telling Arjuna, don't be so concerned with the physical existence of those on the battlefield. There is a higher dharma going on here. For the good of the whole world, this battle needs to take place so that your wonderful brother Yudhishthira, who personifies dharma, will take the throne for the good of the whole world. This is Krishna's main concern. And everybody else, they're going to change their bodies sooner or later. If they die in this battlefield in the presence of myself, he doesn't say it explicitly, but this is what happens, then they'll all be exalted, go back to Godhead, or get a much better future. So it's all auspicious. Although, on material terms, it's a huge bloodbath. Now, after the battle, all the thousands and millions of corpses, not just the human beings, but the animals, the horses, the elephants, it was vast. But Yudhishthira was heartbroken. If you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a very moving passage there. He was inconsolable. And so what happened that they guided him to Bhishma Dev, who was dying on the battlefield. Bhishma Dev had this benediction from his father that he could, if he didn't want to die, he wouldn't die. So, but he was injured. He was shot through with all these arrows. He's lying on a bed of arrows, but he's keeping his life air within. And so Krishna comes personally. It's a very wonderful scene. And so many other great souls arrive, and Yudhishthira comes. And then Bhishma Dev, in that state, he preaches to Yudhishthira. He consoles him. He says, no, it's all for the good. And he instructs him in all these details of how to rule the country. It's in the Mahabharata. And so Yudhishthira is pacified, and he takes up the throne. But aside from that, the fact is that each of us is a living entity. We've had many, many lives before. We'll have a future life. Human form of life is very rare and meaningful because we can understand this philosophy and understand the real goal that we have as human beings, which is basically, preliminarily, to escape this round of birth and death, which is very painful and is not necessary for us, and is due to our own activities of turning away from Krishna to a world of sin. Now that's what this is all about, what the 2 paragraphs we read, is that there's a certain science of understanding why we suffer. This is in the Nectar of Devotion also, as described there. There's a cycle. Just by turning away from Krishna, immediately we get enthralled with this external energy, and we forget all about our relationship with Krishna. We try to become enjoyers, exploiters, and owners of this world, just like Krishna. But we're not Krishna. And so we fail again and again and again. Now this is mentioned in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole process. Described, because what happens is as soon as we lose our contact with Krishna, we can't lose it, but as soon as we forget it, we become fearful. Because here we are trying to be gods, but we're not gods. We're all living in these very fragile bodies which are subject to so many inequities, right? I mean, we're all getting older, and even if you're not old, you can suffer so many difficulties, physical, mental, emotional, right? The threefold miseries. It's always good to go over those. They're always threatening, or we're suffering on. Adhyatmik, Adhibhautik, Adhidaivik. Does everyone know these? We know them intimately. We may not know their names, but they're Adhyatmik miseries, those which are due to your own body and mind, right? The weather can be perfect. You have a wonderful bank balance, or your family is all healthy, everything's wonderful, but you're totally depressed. There's something bothering you, or you have some, chronic disease that you were born with. There's a million different things that can go wrong, and we know it's happening all over the place, even to ourselves. So this is like, it's incongruous because we ourselves, pure spirit, are full of bliss. And we're meant to enjoy constantly in relation to Krishna. And we have that understanding, although maybe not explicit. We're trying to achieve that through matter, but it's impossible. Because there's all of these, as Prabhupada immortally called them, inebrieties. There's all these negative things. So the adhyatmic miseries are there. Our own body and mind, you can testify, I can testify. Then there's others I may be in perfectly healthy state, mentally, emotionally, physically, but I'm surrounded by enemies. They could be in my own family, right? They could be, my neighbor. They could be the Russians. I grew up in the 50s and 60s dreading the World War III coming to get me. I grew up with the watching on TV, black and white, little black and white TV, 50 megabyte bombs blowing up by the Soviet Union. And then, then went into my little 6-year-old brain, and I was dreaming about that. I woke up crying about that. I commit, The Red Scare. I mean, you grew up with that. So that itself is a misery, the anxiety that comes with it. And then there's, all kinds of bullies on the schoolyard, and so many things. My big brother, he, at one point I thought he was the most evil person on the planet. And so, adibautic miseries, probably he gives example, bed bugs. He maybe had experience. We all have other. I like to give this example because many of you haven't heard all of my. I've been giving classes. I realized since 1989, you can this class, this evening class, and you go back to Miami. It started in 1983. So I told many of the same little stories again, but anyway, so. What was I going to refer to? See, this is what happens when you get off. Huh? Other living entities. Yeah. I never had bed bugs. Anyway, it'll come back to me. That's one of the adhyatmic miseries, forgetting things as you get older. And then come the adidaivic miseries. These can sometimes be, like super bad on a large scale. Remember the fires just last season, upstate in New York, and now Australia's burning up. People are living peacefully. I visited Australia in 1994. I was in Brisbane, right near the ocean. Some of it's very idyllic. But now the whole continent is overheating from climate change, climate catastrophe, and it's so hot. And drought conditions and high winds is what they call them bushfires. What we call brush fires, they call bushfires. And they're burning so hot that thousands of people have to leave their homes and go to the sea. Just imagine if this whole city was burning, we ran running to the edge of the ocean for safety. That happened just 2 days ago. Now they had to be rescued by boats and things. Now you can say these are not mutually exclusive. Because we can say, this is adidaivic miseries, these fire, But then you can look back and say, but human beings burning the fossil fuels have changed the climate and it's producing all this overheating. So it's a mix of things. So the point is that this is what life in the material world is like. And therefore, there's always a little bit of anxiety which can explode into real fear. And this is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in this verse. Bhayam Tvatiya Banavesha Takshad Ishad Apetasya Viparyo Smriti Yanmayato Buddha Abhajetam Bhaktyaka Yesham Guru Devatatma. Adhyatmic misery is hitting me right now. I love it when they put the tulsi leaves in there. It makes it very sacred. But I tend to catch in the throat. I'll tolerate. Harekrishna. So, what does this verse mean? This is a really important verse. The source of fear. Bhayam dvitiya benaves. Dvitiya means this second thing. This is the Krishna's energy, which we try to separate from Krishna. We want to control it, right? But it really all belongs to me, as he said. Everything belongs to me. The control, it should be used for Krishna's service. That's the proper use. Which brings us back, gradually cultivates our natural Krishna consciousness. But no, we want to separate it from Krishna. So that creates fear. Because we're no longer under the all-protective consciousness of Krishna's lotus feet. Ishara petasya. This is a key phrase. It means turning your back on Krishna. This is why I never like to turn my back. Even when I'm in a temple, we may be walking back, If if you see, as we do a kirtan, I'm always looking this way, that way, so I don't have to turn my back to Krishna. We all know you're not supposed to sit with your back to Krishna. That's a regular principle. But it's good to always be aware of where the Srila Prabhupada is and the deities are. You go to Mayapur, it's kind of difficult. You got deities in every direction. You got Nrsingadev over here, and you got the deities over here. There's Prabhupada over here. But the point is that that's why we're in the material world. We turned our back on Krishna and focused on his energy. You see, Dvitiya Abhinaveshita, it means absorbed. Isha and Viparya Yasmati. This concept of Viparya is very significant. What it means is backwards. Everything's upside down. Instead of being the servants of God, we're God's competitors. Instead of trying to enjoy by giving Krishna enjoyment, by serving him with the things, we're trying to enjoy directly. The things that are really sources of misery, we're taking to be sources of happiness. This is so obvious in cases of drugs and alcohol, right? I mean, if you become addicted to those things, no one drinks or takes a drug in order to be miserable. This is why I'm taking drugs, so I'll become a drug addict and become a thief and dirty and roll around. No. People do that to have a good time. But then you become controlled by that external object, and that is the source of misery. That's just a metaphor for all material things. Everything you try to enjoy in this world. It's very simple. This a little explanation in the book we read, that especially if you're cut off from the Vedas and from real scientific knowledge of how the world works in Dharma, you're bound to commit sinful activity. You go down to the supermarket. We're surrounded. We got Ralph's over here. We got Vaughn's down there. You got Sprouts, and everywhere you look, there's the meat department. And you walk in there completely forgetting. You have no idea, and you just take buy this cut, that cut, some hamburger meat, and you go home and cook it. And people don't realize the level of sin that they're performing. And as described here, it doesn't seem to, no problem. We just had dinner and went to sleep, But you just built, you're planting a seed. The seed is fructifying. Just as Prabhupada said, you plant a seed and nothing happens right away, but you water it, gradually it comes up. And then you enjoy the fruits. Well, now you're enjoying the fruits of suffering, grievous suffering, from the suffering you caused, even unknowingly, to these cows and the chickens, all of them, but especially the cows. So this is what happens, is you become oblivious to the results of your actions, to the implications of your actions. So that's what viparya means. The sources of misery you think can be sources of pleasure. What you are not, namely the body, this is just a temporary cloth. I'm wearing this garment. This was given to me by Bhadrinarayan Swami. I always think of him when I wear it. Keeps you warm, right? But eventually it's going to wear out, right? And I'll have to discard it. So I'm not going to, it's not going to be a major crisis in my life. I already have a substitute. But the point is, that's what your body is. This is Krishna's words. Vasang sijirnan yata bihaya naban nigunnate nano parani tata sharirani vihaya jirnan yangyani sangyati navani dehi. Comes 2 verses after the other one that I gave you. Very simple concept. Just as we take off old garments and discard them, or give them to the Goodwill store, and get new ones that are wearable. Similarly, we give up our old and useless bodies and take on new ones. The soul cannot be killed, and the body, when you think about it, it's a very complicated contraption. You ask any doctor, what did I just hear? And when people who really know how the body works, it's a miracle that we live one day. All the things that have to go just right for you to just have a normal day without any medical crisis. We don't think of it. This is the problem in ignorance. We take all this for granted. But we're in a very delicate machine. Yantra Rudani Maya. Krishna is also a yantra. It's a yantra. And eventually we're going to leave it. So it's not us. When we identify with it and we try to simply make a calculation of what is good on the basis of what is good for this body, which is not just the gross body, but the mind also, the emotions, everything, then we're missing the point. So what is the solution? This verse goes on. Ishada Vipari, everything's backwards. So we have to turn it back to what's really true. And that the soul is meant to be a servant of God. We are part and parcel of God. Just like our hand does our bidding. If I want to lift this water, I do it without thinking, right? So the hand obeys. Sometimes it doesn't obey. There's a problem, right? Suddenly, oh, what happened to my hand? My foot fell asleep. It happens practically every time I get a clap. So it doesn't work right away until the blood circulation goes on. So we're now like the paralyzed hand on the body of Krishna, and we're cause of trouble. So therefore we're quarantined over here till we get better in the material world. So this knowledge that we're getting from the Bhagavad Gita here, this particular verse says this is now, I'm going to tell you the most secret of all secrets. Raja Guhyam means the king of confidential knowledge, and king of knowledge altogether, meaning that if you understand this knowledge, you're equipped to cultivate your knowledge and your relationship with Krishna, so that this will be the last time we were implicated and covered by a material body with all the difficulties. So in this description here of how ignorance produces sin, sin produces suffering. So what's the solution? Let's get some real knowledge, and then we won't perform the sin. We'll act in such a way that we're eradicating previous sinful activities. See, this is the wonderful efficiency, if you will, of bhakti yoga. Is that this ordinary people, all right, we're carrying all our karmic record from who knows how many births backwards. That some of them are ready to fructify, right? In this lifetime, when things happen, I'm driving along perfectly all right, but some guy is texting behind me. We just had a devotee had an accident, no fault of hers. She's pulling up to a stop sign, or a stop light, slowing down, and the guy behind her was doing something, probably texting or something, didn't notice that and slammed into her. She's recovering okay, but it's like, what can you do about those things? You live in a world, I'll tell you, I've been living in this one house here for 20 years, and there's trees growing on the street, very peaceful, And one branch fell off a tree. The lady was sitting in her car, came crashing down and killed her. This happened a few years ago. Who would expect? Who knows, So the point is, it's urgent. This knowledge is a call to action. It's not just, to think about it, but we have to act on it. And that's what this line, Pavitram idam uttamam. It's purifying. Purifying of what? It purifies us of all this latent karma that we're carrying, and our destiny changes. Even unknowingly, we're under the guidance of Krishna and the protection. And the wonderful thing about it is, do you want to? We have some seats. We can get him. Sit. He'll get you. That's his job. He does that. Everyone who comes in, he gets it. And so the knowledge here that we're going to hear about, and is pure devotional service in this chapter, culminating in the most important instruction in the whole Bhagavad Gita. I'll give you a preview. It doesn't have to be a secret. At the last verse of the chapter, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru mame vaisvasi yukpaivam atmana mat parayana. Mame vaisvasi, you come to me. If you just do these 4 things, think of me, Krishna says. Become my devotee. Bow down to me and offer your homage to me and your sacrifice to me, your worship me. You'll come to, here he says, you'll certainly come to me at the end of life because you'll be linked to me in devotion. He repeats the verse in the 18th chapter in an even more intimate way. He says the same exact thing, think of me, become my devotee, worship me, bow down to me. You'll come to me, O friend, I promise you this boon I shall bestow. In other words, there he's speaking to Arjuna, of course, as a friend, but he's also our friend. He says, Sudidam sarva bhutanam. As in English, Sanskrit, which is a perfect language, has different levels of friendship. Right? Sakha, bandhu, right? And surit. Surit is the most intimate friend. Surit literally means someone who is always ready to act for your welfare. Now, where do you find a friend like that? In this material world. I mean, we all have our good friends, but there's usually a limit. You've been sleeping on their couch for like 3 weeks. You say, can you let me know when you're going to leave? Like. In other words, there's always a limit for friendship, but not for Krishna. as a super soul, he's been riding with us for who knows how many millions of births. Still staying with us, trying to, give us intelligence, how to act, trying to give us good instruction, but we can't hear him. The human form of life still can't hear him, but he comes externally as the book, good book like Bhagavad Gita, and as the spiritual master, as the guru, to give us the same instruction. The only problem is if we are ready to hear. And we should know that it's instruction for our eternal benefit, this instruction. So this knowledge we're given, pavitram idam uttamam, the most purifying. And what is the most, to think of Krishna. What's the most powerful way to think of Krishna, especially in this age? Chanting the holy name, right? Harekrishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So purifying, because it's Krishna, personally. Nama Chintamani Krishnas, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Purna, Shuddho, Nitya Mukto, Abhinadva Nama Namino. This is a verse we should know at least the meaning of. So he says, Nama Chintamani Krishna. Now Chintamani stone is a spiritual gem from the spiritual world that transforms you. Just as Prabhupada compared to he called it a touchstone. And even, I swear, in a lecture he said, in other words, the philosopher's stone, a touchstone. Prabhupada expanded vocabulary, like he gave a new meaning to the word infallible. It doesn't just mean flawless or always speaks, the truth. It means unable to fall, like Krishna. He can't fall under the sway of material energy. So, touchstone in Prabhupada's vocabulary means you touch to something and it turns to gold. So Chintamani, you touch it and it transforms your consciousness. Chinta means consciousness. So it's a consciousness gem. So the idea is that if you simply hear this name and chant it with concentration, what to speak of devotion, it will transform your consciousness and give so much benefit. So here's a Nama Chintamani Krishna. The holy name is like a Chintamani gem. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. It is a personified rasa with Krishna. Your relation with Krishna can be revealed just by this holy name. Purnak Shuddho Nitya Mukto. It is a complete form of yoga. Chanting and hearing the holy name. Haridas Thakur proved it. We chant our 16 rounds. Sometimes we struggle to finish our rounds. Do you know the history of this movement? When Prabhupada started with his little crew in 26nd Avenue, there's no Tulsi beads, there's no neem beads. They went down to what used to be called the 5 and Dime, which today would be the dollar store, and they bought these big red beads, like decorative beads, wooden beads. They weren't japa beads. And some, they drilled holes in them and they strung their beads, big japa beads. Just like 10 or 15 guys and a few ladies. Jadharani was maybe the only one. So they've been chanting, And then it came time and probably wanted to get some initiated devotees, so we're going to have an initiation. So I don't know how many there were. I don't think there were even a dozen that were in that first initiation, maybe 6 or 7. So then comes the time for vows, And Prabhupada, before the initiation is, you're going to have to chant 64 rounds. That was the standard in the Gaudiya Math. That was Lord Chaitanya's standard. There's a kind of a funny pastime with that. Lord Chaitanya, I think he was in Jagannath Puri at the time. And but many of his followers, they would all come from Navadvip to be with him for like 3 months of the rainy season, 4 months of the rainy season, which included Rath Yatra. And so they were all set up by Shivananda saying they had their quarters, and some of them wanted to invite him for lunch. This was the thing, sannyasi gave them. So Lord Chaitanya said, I will not accept the invitation to lunch for anyone who's not a Lakshmi Pati. Not Lakshmi Pati, a Lakpati. Lakpati. L-A-K-H. Lak is, all the Indians know, 100,000. That's 100,000. So they were all depressed because they're all very austere and not very wealthy. So they thought a Lakpati usually means they have at least 100,000 rupees, which is a lot. So Lord Chaitanya laughed and said, no. I don't mean that you have to have 100,000 rupees. I mean you have to chant 100,000 names a day, which is basically 64 rounds, if you multiply it out, It's inconceivable to us, but that they all were jubilant. Oh, that we can do, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, chant about 6 hours, So that was the standard when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur began his movement, the Gaudiya Math, to chant 64 rounds a day. And amazingly, this is what I heard. I have to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure he didn't have a japa period like we have in the morning program. They just had to find time during the day to chant 64 rounds. Anyway, that's what it was. So Prabhupada had the japa period, but even with our 2-hour japa period, you're just putting your toe in the water. You're not going to chant 64. So they came back to Prabhupada after many of them had tried to chant 64. They probably got to maybe 20, if that. Because nobody was chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. They were all Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. You chant that slow, you'll be chanting 15 minutes around at least. Anyway, they came back. Prabhupada, we can't. If you want us to do anything else, we won't be able to chant 64 rounds. He says, okay. 32. So they went in the back 30. He said, Prabhupada, we cannot chant 32 rounds. 16, absolute minimum. And that's what it's stayed ever since. Now, because Prabhupada said it that way, that we can go back to God with those 16 rounds, provided that we, use the rest of our time also for devotional service. But so that chanting. But the wonderful thing is, because the holy name, and the rest of this verse says, so it's purna shuddha. It's a complete method in this age. Kalar doshanade rajan astiyeko mahadgana kirtanadiva krishna se mukta sangapanam vijay. This Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. Kaler doshanade, O king, Rajan. But there's one very wonderful special quality in this age. Just by chanting the holy name, Nama Astiyego Mahanga Kirtanareva Krishnasa. Now he speaks about kirtan, but that can also apply to your japa. And they both go together. Mukta Sangha Param Bhajet. Mukta Sangha means you become free from all your attachments in this material world. Mukta Sangha and Param Bhajet. You go to the supreme abode. Param. You can go back to God just by this. Now, how to come to the point of successfully chanting, pure chanting, without offenses, then we have all of these instructions from Rupa Goswami. But we should know how valuable this holy name is and take shelter. And the whole reason is in the last line. Abhinadva nama namino. This is inconceivable. It means that there's no difference between the name and the named. When you chant a holy name, especially purely with some devotion, sincerity, you're associating with Krishna directly. And that purification, that's what we're discussing, pavitram idam uttamam. Purification process is very, very powerful. And there's so many verses describing, even just chanting once, what to speak of chanting seriously, immediately eradicates all your sinful actions. That's what Prabhupada is speaking about here, which are ready to fructify into suffering. In other words, you're well on your way to breaking free of this material world by seriously chanting Hare Krishna. So when Krishna says, man mana, think of me, then we can say, okay, let me begin by seriously chanting the holy name. That's why we have beads every day, integrated into your life. So, any discussion on these points? We can read a little bit more. Yes? Mukunda Chara.
The verse that you mentioned, that how Prabhupada changed the standard from 64 to 32, 16. But on the other hand, we say that an acharya or a guru is author or authentic if they follow
Previous acharyas.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, yes, sometimes we'll say that from Prabhupada, that why is he bona fide and the other people not, because he actually followed Shastra, he actually followed the principles of it. So, it makes such a radical change. Could you just say something on that?
Yeah, that wasn't the only thing he changed. I mean, he did a lot of transformations to facilitate. And over the years, he added things when the devotees were ready. It's the difference between a principle and a detail. The details of how the acharya presents the siddhanta may change according to time, place, and candidate and people. But the essence is always there. The essence is retained. Now, of course, who can make that decision, what to compromise on or delay enforcing? And, Prabhupada kept the essence, the 4 regular principles, the chanting of the holy name, and the vows, taking all of these things. And gradually, like for the deity worship, that was something he also introduced in San Francisco in '67 with the Jagannath deities. But it was like very rudimentary, compared to what we have today. I mean, he was getting criticism from his godbrothers, especially for performing the marriages. You know, he found that, especially when he went to the West Coast, that there were all of these hippies, and they all had the girlfriend, boyfriend, and they were very interested in Krishna consciousness. So these were his people you know. So he said, "Okay, fine, you know, but you have to get married." And so he was. Sannyasis don't do that. Traditionally, that is something sannyasis don't do. But who else was going to do it? You know, how would Lord Chaitanya's movement flourish if you couldn't initiate these eager couples who were, you know, sincere, and have them, you know, do all the preaching? And Prabhupada loved to point out who really opened up, you know, England, you know, and it's three couples, three devotee couples, and they were all led by the lady, Yamuna. I was at her memorial. I forget what year it was. It was at least 5-6 years ago in L.A. And Shyamasundar was there, Malati, you know. And they were a wonderful life. There's a beautiful biography of her, written by her long-time friend and associate, Dina Tarani. You know, it describes all the stories they did, they had to go through in London and everything. And there were 6 of them, and they had their morning program. Sometimes they were scattered, and eventually they got a place. It's an amazing story. And Sarma says, yeah, it was Yamuna who got us up in the morning and kept us going, you know, as a temple president, you know. In other words, she was the one who was most serious and who was determined that it was going to happen. So that's unheard of. You know, that's just not part of the whole Vedic paradigm. But Prabhupada, you know, he sent them there, and he sent ladies out alone, you know, to go and approach people and sell books, and they were protected, you know, by Krishna. So there's a whole bunch of things that Prabhupada did, and so you have to realize what is important, what is essential, and what is a detail that can be then brought in later. And Prabhupada was expert at doing that, and palena parichiyate, which means you can judge by the fruit. It worked, you know. But he always insisted that the core principles be maintained. If you compromise those, then the whole thing can collapse. And you know, those principles of moral principles, ethical principles, 4 regular principles, the do's and the don'ts. You know, so it's he's definitely, you know, followed the parampara in the most wonderful way. And Bhaktisiddhanta did the same thing. You know, I mean, for his day, for a sannyasi to put on a coat and pants, you know, or to ride in a car was revolutionary. You know, and Prabhupada was revolutionary by getting in the airplane. You know, there was that wonderful poem that Hayagriva came up with, the Paramahamsa on Lufthansa. Lufthansa is, you know, the airline. I don't know if that's a German airline, you know. Flying all over the world, what to speak of riding in a car, you know. So Prabhupada compromised where he had to compromise, but then when the devotees were ready, he introduced it like the Shila worship. He didn't introduce right away, even with the deity worship. That came later when devotees were ready for it. You know. So that's what that's about. All right, we have a few minutes. So, oh yes, please, go ahead. It's best to chant your 16 rounds, but at certain points, I'm sure you go to India, you know, you go on a retreat or something, and at that time you can take on more and get the taste. I mean, I did that. We went on these japa retreats, and I remember each one of them had a day, you know, with a 64 round day, you know. It's really amazing because the whole day is just all about the holy name. You're hearing about the holy name, you know, you're trying to apply the principles, and then you're chanting more. And so it's good to get a taste of that, but you realize that you know, your regular service and like the morning program. I mean, if you get up at you know, 3 o'clock, or a lot of devotees get up earlier than that, and you get going by, if there's no Mangalartik and all this program that we have, you start chanting at 3 or 3:30. And you chant for 5 or 6 hours. By 9:30, you're ready, you know, for your transcendental breakfast of prasadam. You know, you can chant 64 rounds. I figured it out. 5 minutes a round is quite a clip, but if you're able to do that, It takes 5 hours and 20 minutes to chant 64 rounds, if you're really able to go, at a good clip like that, which is feasible, but it's pretty hard to do that and still have the morning program as Prabhupada set it up. Yeah. No. Because we're a preaching movement, and part of that preaching is to each other, And the thing is, to realize the importance of supporting the mission, rather than just going off and doing my own thing, and how that will evoke the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. There may come a time, when we're invalid or whatever, or can't do that so much, and then you increase the chanting, and there's another thing. That's my understanding. Yes, Hasigram. Yeah. Yeah, I always remember this, and we'll have to end here because in 1975 I came down here from LA for the Govardhan festival. They had the old temple on 3rd and Thorn, which is right near the park, and the festival's in the park, And Prabhupada came there. And we heard when we all piled out of our little vans, and we came down here, that there was a Babaji in ISKCON, and he had come to this festival, and we saw him, and there he was with the white, the Babaji clothes rather than the regular, even sannyasi clothes. And the story was that he had gotten a diagnosis in Detroit that he had a terminal heart condition, and he had approached Prabhupada. He said, "Prabhupada, I have this condition, can I just chant and be Babaji?" Prabhupada initiated him as Babaji. Many devotees don't notice. So there he was, And then later on, we went back to LA, and I was working on books, and he went to Mayapur, all with Prabhupada's approval. You can just go to Mayapur and just chant there, until he passed away. But in Mayapur, he consulted some Ayurvedic doctor, or maybe a Western doctor, I don't know, but this is what I heard. And he said, "Oh, you don't have a terminal heart problem. You can take this medicine and everything, and you can control it." Oh, really? And he had already been chanting for some time, and he'd wander around near the Ganges. And then when he heard that, he went back to Detroit, and he never didn't hear about him anymore. In other words, he had gotten so much into the Babaji mood and everything, he had gotten detached from, the ISKCON idea, the service. Anyway, it was sad. But it's not easy to do that, and it's always important to take on the mood and mission of the acharya that you're working on. In this mood, it's always a preaching mood, push it on, Prahlad Maharaj, in those famous 2 verses, that I have no problem at all, but I am lamenting for all these poor souls who are trying to enjoy Maya Sukhaya. And so I'm not going to go, off to the forest and the mountains and just for my own benefit. I'm going to stay in the cities, And so that's those 2 verses, really characterize this movement. All right, we better adjourn. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much for